welcome back to Surrogate Social. I'm Monica, and I have Tasha Root with us, who is a 5-time surrogate. And today is a very special day because she also got heartbeat confirmation. So all around good day. So welcome, Tasha. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you. So we're just going to do a chat. I really wanted just to kind of talk about your overall, obviously, your experiences throughout kind of like relationships with, because you've had quite the array of intended parents. So I really wanted to kind of talk about that and just your general experience as a surrogate and kind of just share your wealth of knowledge. So first of all, just tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Yeah, so I'm Tasha. I live in Arizona. I've been here for almost 10 years. I do have a 9-year-old son. He is my only one. I've been a single mom since pretty much becoming a mom, so it's just me and him. And then I also work at a fertility clinic as well. So I've been there for a little over 7 years doing fertility. So about 8 years in surrogacy and 7 years in fertility.
So really what led you to surrogacy from the get-go? So, after you had your son, what led you to surrogacy fairly soon right after?
Yeah. So I actually knew I wanted to be a surrogate earlier than being a mom. So about 19 years old at my job at the time, I worked at the NICU and saw a lot of patients that struggled to have these little babies. And we actually had somebody that was a surrogate in the department next to me. And I was like, that is just so cool. And I went home and Googled how to be a surrogate and found out you do have to be a parent first. You do have to have a birth. So when my son was about 6 weeks old and everything went perfect with my labor and delivery, I was on Google. I'm ready to be a surrogate. And it took off really quickly after that. I think I was in medical screening by the time he was like 5-6 months old. So I was ready.
Yeah. And there's history, right? Then here we are all these years later, right?
I just couldn't stop.
Yeah, quite literally. So, so let's talk about your first journey. So what year was that? Just so everyone has context of like the years of literally experience that you have.
Yes, my very first journey was in 2017 is when I got pregnant. My son was about 10 months old when I did my first transfer, which means I would have started medical clearance and everything mid to late 2016. So I got pregnant in 2017 and had the baby in 2017. So that was my first baby.
Mm-hmm. So, going into that first surrogacy, compared to now, obviously you were naive and, just a first little newbie. Yeah. So what was your expectations of matching, what your hope was of what that relationship wanted to look like or what you thought it was going to look like, just because now you have such a different perspective on it. And so you can think back, what were you thinking it was going to be like, hoping it was going to be like? Think back to newbie little Tasha.
Yeah, my newbie self is so different than my 5-time self right now. So one thing I didn't know as a newbie is that international couples were a really common thing. I had no idea. I had seen Hallmark videos and learned about surrogacy. And even the one person I knew, they were friends doing it. So I just always assumed that you would find somebody local, maybe in your town or that you spend so much time with and you have this baby and it's this really close connection. Just to be thrown, my first match was Israel. And I went, well, that's kind of far away. Is that normal?
Yeah. How does that work? How do they see me? How do I talk to them? All these topics come up, or do I have to go to them? I don't want to leave the United States. All these come up, right?
Right. Yeah, you see pictured videos or any kind of movie and the parents are in the delivery and they're so close and everybody, and it's just that's how it's supposed to be. So when my first match came from Israel, I was like, well, that's not normal, is it? What would somebody be doing in Israel? Knowing now that actually international is really common. It was probably more common than I would have found it international. Yeah. But I learned more about the family and actually loved them and their story and went for that match. And it was actually way better than I would have ever anticipated. But that was probably the biggest thing as a newbie. If I told my newbie self now is prepare for international. That is common and it is perfectly fine.
Right. And so you would say a good advice to somebody new, obviously be educated, make sure that, obviously we're an agency, but go with an agency, be protected, making sure you're not traveling somewhere wacky or anything like that, but be open-minded. Yeah. Maybe that would be a good advice?
Absolutely. Be open-minded. My recommendation would always be go with an agency. I'm like, I tell that to anybody looking into it because I'm like, they help you with every step. Like they make it seamless. Like you don't have to, they do it for you. You know, you're there. But yeah, have an open mind because international, that was probably one of my best relationships with somebody international. So I'm like, absolutely have an open mind about where they're located.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, to speak that at too, like I think that that sounds scary in the beginning, or like, how does this work, or what's the dynamic of this, or how do we communicate? Because it, like you said, it's kind of what you envision or you see in the movies is like, oh, they're there and we're best friends and we go to dinner and we go to, they're at every single appointment. But actually, even if you're local, even maybe even the same city, that's not typically the case, right? Like scheduling conflicts, or
Yeah.
if you think at OB appointments, it takes longer to drive there and park the car than you're at the OB. So typically, if you're lucky to have that local match, your intended parent or intended mom or even intended fathers, let's say, don't come to OB appointments traditionally or
Exactly.
commonly, so it's not necessarily that kind of like this preconceived notion or vision that we have. And some of my international matches are some of my very closest
Yeah.
matches in some cases,
That's exactly
especially
it.
like now, right? And so, with messaging and video calls, and it can be quite intimate and very, very close. So speak to that match a little bit. You're still in contact with them.
Yeah.
So what does that look like? Nearly, we're coming up, just shy of 10 years now. What does that look like this many years later? And like, how often do you talk to them, and kind of what's that dynamic of that relationship look like?
Yeah, so we were a really close match. Probably not
Mm-hmm.
the normal, but we had this really, really
Yeah.
strong family connection to the point that I went to Israel and spent a week with them when I was pregnant. Again, that's not normal, but we had this really close connection. Spent time with them. We talked like we were in constant communication. We talked almost daily.
Mm-hmm.
They're almost like a little second family to me. And then when they came out for delivery, they spent 6 weeks here with me because I was pumping, feeding the baby, and we spent every day together for 6 weeks. We were very close. We always kept really good communication. That has kind of fizzled out a little bit over the years as expected. We're all very busy people, but holidays, we still talk, birthdays, like we're still in communication every single year, multiple times a year. It's just not weekly or daily like it was when you're pregnant, as we would anticipate, but still talk all these years later. They're in Israel, which is sometimes a scary zone. So just checking in, how's everybody? And still great family.
So, you've had, and we'll touch on this too, you've had kind of all versions of matches and relationships. So, just from your experience, we'll touch on those later. So, you know, relationships can look different for everybody. And so, when somebody talks to you about that, like, also what's your advice to that too, is like not comparing, or being open-minded of what it looks like after the delivery, right? So because you're the center of the universe, and they're focused while you're pregnant. But just like you said, obviously we hope and it should shift to the baby and their family, and so that can kind of dwindle, or even the first couple years it could be much more focused on checking in with you or getting updates, and that can fizzle. So what would be kind of some good advice or some tips on like how to not take that personal, or maybe get your feelings hurt in that, just because you're more experienced in that, through the years and the different types of relationships you've had with the intended parents?
Yeah, so you definitely
Not specific to them, but just across the board.
Yeah, definitely just you've got to be open with it. You understand that when you are pregnant, you are the center of this whole universe with this baby, and then all of a sudden they have a
Mhm.
newborn. And what takes precedence
Right.
now is the same thing that was your biggest concern is now their biggest concern. So I think it's really common to be so close when you're there and you're so close to delivery and everybody's so excited, and then life happens after, and it is perfectly normal and acceptable. You're also in your busy life. You just have to keep an open mind going into it, but then just adapt to the situation afterwards and understand that lives do happen. Lives go on. As a surrogate, you are also a mom. And so, you just have your own life, and your kid is your whole world. And now you just gave them their whole world.
Right. And sometimes it's a nice transition too, to kind of settle back into your own routine, or like not have, not that it's like a burden, but kind of not have that underlying like, oh, I need to be checking in, or, just like that one extra task of your day, right? Like that you can
Exactly.
ease back into your own routine, or just like, get back into your own groove too, right? And just
Absolutely.
kind of
I
shift your
do
focus.
think that helps you kind of separate from, I just had this baby and I now have this whole life of my own I get to go back to, whether that's in a good thing and you have fun and vacation now, that you do have that your own separate life. And I think that can be a good thing. You let them do their thing
Sure.
with the baby. Obviously, you guys can check in and there's major milestones and you want to, what does the baby look like now? And but you do get back to your own life and remember you were a person of your own before that started.
What a concept, right? Like, yeah, because I mean, you've a lot of times too, like, Stephanie, if you had your kids right, well, you did, you literally had Parker and then went right into surrogacy. So it's like you're pregnant, and you quite literally have done this too. It's like your identity is being pregnant. So it's nice to kind of shift back and be like, okay, well, what do I look like not being a surrogate, or not being pregnant, or, how do I refocus back on myself, or back on my career, or back on my children, or, things like that. And that can be scary, kind of settling into that, and like, well, how do I focus on me? What do I do now?
Right,
Right.
right. You've got to remember you, though. You are still just as important in your healing and your mental health.
Yeah, that's so true. So, okay, so then let's transition into your second match, because that was definitely different,
Different.
and what that looks like. And yeah, definitely different, and definitely it can be a common match, right? Like, so definitely something that looks different, and we need to keep an open mind to, and respectful of what different intended parents may or may want, right?
Right, right. And this, the good thing is going in when you're in your matching, you guys kind of get that idea of what you want from each other. I know, Monica, you introduced that to both sides of like, what are we looking for in this match? So I had such an intense match the first time, which I loved so much, but I'm chasing around a toddler now. I still have this other family that I'm constantly, in communication and remembering birthdays, holidays, things to check in there, that going into the second match, I was more open to maybe this is a little less communicative, and I let them, and it worked out perfectly. I matched with this
Right.
amazing single mom in Beijing, and we talked I don't want to say when we had to, but like there was important updates to go over. Right, here's, we have a translator, so something totally different than before, but there was the major, we have heartbeats, we have OB appointments, and it got closer to delivery, and then mom comes to delivery, picks up the baby, and that was the end of our communication, which might not seem ideal to other people, but to me at that time, it was kind of what I needed, right? It was just kind of separating off from that, still having that first baby that I talked to all the time, having my own son, and I did feel really good, confident, I guess, about it ending right there, and we both go our separate ways.
Right. And so, and to touch on that too, like, it wasn't like you were blindsided by that.
Mm-mm.
Like, you were prepared for that. Like, you were open to that. Like, you literally came into it and were like, I'm open to it. Like, I feel good about this. Like, you had quite literally was like, that sounds rad, because it was very intense, right? Like, you were almost ready for a little less of that communication level.
Yeah.
Like, and you also knew you had the support from this side of us, and like, we stayed in constant communication. You knew you were still gonna pump, because that's something that's very important to
Mhm.
you, and so you still had that kind of decompress for yourself and your mental health and your recovery. And so that didn't shift. So we stayed in constant communication. There, like, the disconnect didn't happen too much. So you were still supported within your bubble,
Totally.
but you respected what the intended mom wanted. And so it wasn't like this cold cut, like we weren't expecting it. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely not. I know I definitely went into it wanting something not as I don't want to say serious as my first one, but as intense as it was, as much as I loved it, I was looking for something like this one we can have like a little bit more distance of it. And the intended mom, I had that personality too, culturally what she was doing and coming here to have a baby. And it was just we kept those I mean, she was so nice when we talked, so there was nothing like weird about our vibes, super great, but we just knew from the hospital, like, this is where we part. We took pictures, it was lovely, but this is where we end, and that's okay.
Right. That's exactly perfectly said. Right. Like, so it doesn't make it any less. She was entirely grateful. Like,
It was
she was
amazing.
respectful. Like, doesn't take away from what you did. You were still immensely proud of yourself. Like your body did exactly what it was, you wanted it to do. You asked of your body, like all those things, right? You were still prideful.
It was
You were still able to recover
wonderful.
the way you wanted to, right?
Yeah.
And so, like all of those things still kind of check all the boxes, but you still served its purpose in that moment, exactly what it needed to do.
It was still such a great labor, and it was such a great delivery, and it was such a great pregnancy, and she was a tiny, the cutest little baby, but I don't know what she looks like today, and I love them so much and wish them the best, but this was just exactly what I think her and I both needed at that time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think, so this is the key for like being happy as a surrogate, right? So if that, so we could remove the context of like your first one or maybe even like your follow up surrogacies, is that could, and let me back up one statement. So intended parents could come to me and say, oh, we want to talk to our surrogate. We want to talk to them after birth. But obviously that could change. And she very well may have said, let's say she said she wanted to have communication, prior to, and maybe she changed her mind, or maybe it just got intense. And just like any friendship or relationship or acquaintanceship, you have full intention of sending a message. I don't know. I do that sometimes too. I'm like, oh, I think of so-and-so. And I'm like, oh, I need to send a message. And a day goes by, a month goes by. And then all of a sudden it's 6 months, right? And so whatever the reason may be, once you're out of contract, there's nothing, unfortunately, anybody can do about that besides potentially you reaching out if you want to, or if not. And so sometimes we can't predict how much these relationships are going to look like. So the best advice I could give any surrogate, and maybe you can add to this too now that you've experienced it, is to go into that open-minded, because we can't always predict exactly how these relationships will look. Even if in the match call we say like everyone's going to want to be open and communicative, afterwards, sometimes it doesn't work out like that, right?
That's huge though, just being open with it. It's hard to predict exactly what things are going to look like from match day to delivery day. So you just keep an open mind, and you're still doing an amazing thing at the end of the day regardless.
Exactly, right? And it might be vice versa. It's not even that maybe you don't want to talk to them, like, right? And not that because something bad happened or anything went awry. Maybe you're just like, you know what? I feel fulfilled. Like I'm ready to move on. Like I don't, and it's just that, right? Or life happens and a year goes by and you're like, oh, it's just quite literally that, so I think it's just goes back to not comparing, not, thinking you're not upholding a standard because you don't hear from somebody like somebody else does, or, you're not, if you compare to social media and like someone's posting, their annual get together,
Exactly.
if anything,
Yeah.
I think some of those are maybe the more rare cases, and,
It is hard. I
So,
mean, social media is such a big thing this day, and TikTok, where there are TikToks of intended parents and surrogates doing cute videos and stuff together that you're like, oh, that's cute. But like every journey is different between each surrogate and intended parents, but also every journey is different between each surrogate. Like just each one of mine, everything is so different. So you just have to know that and accept it, really.
Right. I think of just, how many journeys I've been a part of. I mean, quite literally, they're every single, think of the personalities, right? Everything's so different. And I think the best way you can be the most fulfilled for yourself is to be fulfilled in your own journey, right? And not depend on your happiness and the fulfillment from the relationship. It's be fulfilled in your own self, maybe.
Exactly.
Yeah. Would you agree with that?
That goes through to our day-to-day life. My life is not compared to her. You know what I mean? So it exactly carries over to everything that we do.
Yeah. So I guess that would be like a question too. Like, so yeah, like what is that something that you would think would be one of the biggest things to like overcome as a surrogate, is like not comparing to the other surrogates or what you see,
that
each surrogate, or
it is
like
hard to compare. Her beta numbers were higher than mine. She had to, you compare, you do. I mean, as people, we compare ourselves to other people, but we are completely individual. Our beta levels are individual. Our intended parents are individual. You know what I mean? Like it's as surrogates, as people, we want to compare to other people, but we are individual and on our own journey.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yours is a perfect example. Like you being a 5-time surrogate, you work in an IVF clinic, like literally this is your,
My whole life.
your life. How many how many home pregnancy tests did you take? It was wacky. I mean, like you
You.
would think you would be like, "Oh, I got this. I'm not going to worry about it." Like you took a million,
Brilliant. I did. I wanted to see all of them, but just because mine showed up at day 4 and yours showed up at day 7, we have the same, it's hard. It's hard to,
Right.
you do compare. That is something hard about it, but
Yeah, everyone's still human, right? It's still human
yeah,
emotions, and you can still feel, I wish I would hear from them, and that's entirely okay, right? Like, so, you can feel the feelings and maybe be like, oh, I wish I could hear from them. And that doesn't mean that they're not grateful or they don't maybe think of you often, but communication is communication, right? And so we have to still be able to move in grace in that and move on and not still feel proud of ourselves within that,
exactly.
I
We
believe.
all still
Yeah.
did an amazing thing, regardless at the end of the day of what the connection looks like with that parent.
Yeah. So I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges, right? Is just learning how to move within that differences, right?
Exactly.
Would you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
That definitely could
So
be a
then that
challenge.
leads us, yeah, for sure, for sure. So then that leads us to your next two, which is like a picture perfect,
Yeah.
Instagram. Yeah. So
Yeah.
then talk a little bit about
Yeah,
that.
so there is a big flip change from my
Yep.
second one going into my third one. And I did go, well, for one, it was somebody that was just in San Diego, so 5 hours away. So my first local match, but I did go into it knowing that I did want more communication this time. I had been such a big gap and it was fizzling out from the first one, kind of communication wise. And I was like ready to, take on another family that would be close and we were agreeable.
So this is something that we talk about, right? So this is something that Tasha and I talked about from the get-go. So she was like, okay, we did this version, we did this version. So then when we were ready, when I say we, like when I say when you're ready, then I say, okay, well, like, what is this going to look like for you? So this is something that we talk about from the get-go. Like, what is matching going to look for you this time? So then obviously then that helps me when we're looking for profiles and vice versa, right? So this is something that Tasha and I always had an open line of communication going into these matches. So, the second match that was less communicative wasn't a blindside to her. And then when we went into her, you know, next matches, which was a sibling cycle, so she carried for the same couple twice. I knew that she wanted a much more communicative match and a little bit more of, kind of a feely match. And so then that's what we look for. So this is always an open line of communication that we go into it. So these aren't just luck,
Exactly,
how we
exactly.
get here.
I don't know if you remember, but there was a match that you presented to me in between the two, and it wasn't for me. It was something, and it was because of the clinic that they used wasn't my favorite place to be seen. And I just said, yeah,
Exactly.
I would prefer not to do another transfer at that clinic. And we re-looked at our options and ended up with my third and fourth match, who happened to be local, and we ended up with a really close relationship. So I had my
Yeah.
third baby.
I would say you guys are beyond family.
Yeah. I am Auntie Tasha to the babies. That's what I'll always be. I mean, we just got back from a trip at Disneyland with them. Like, so very, very close connection that, again, it's not going to be for everybody. And it's not, it's maybe not super typical to have somebody local and have both of their babies and be as close. I mean, we spent Easter together and holidays. We spent weekends together. We did photo shoots. We did all the things, all the cute little things that we wanted to that maybe I missed in the second one. So it was
Like you guys are like the Instagram postable cuteness for
yeah.
sure.
And that was the journey that I was looking for. And that was just what I was ready for at that time now. Like I'm ready to open up to another family, bring somebody in as close as that first one. And just got so lucky with who I met for 3. And then they asked me to carry their one other embryo that they had. So we ended up with girl siblings. And
Mm-hmm.
they took me to the hospital. They drove me to the hospital for labor and delivery on both of them because they spent the last week in town here when I was getting close to delivery. So just back to like a really close connection with intended parents.
Right. Yeah, and that I think, that it's remarkable and so special when that happens, and it's amazing, but I also think that's the amount of effort that you also put in as a surrogate too, right? So you're open to do those photo sessions and you put in that extra effort. So I think it goes both ways, right? Like,
Yeah.
if a surrogate schedules a photo session or offers that or gifts that to the intended parents, then that might be something that happens. If that's not up your jam as a surrogate, like if you don't want to do a photo session or you don't want to schedule like a birth, like a delivery photo session, then that's not for you as a surrogate. So again, like it's just comparing, it's doing what suits you as a surrogate or you as a human being, right? And so again, just not comparing
Exactly.
and not doing what the norm because that's what you're seeing someone else do.
Exactly. And looking back at the connection, I mean, they were so great. But if I chose to just like, oh, I'll just update them on popular updates, that could have changed our whole dynamic of a connection
1000%.
instead of, sharing everything with them. And then when I was pregnant with the second daughter is when I scheduled a photo shoot. Like I asked them if they would come to Phoenix for a weekend and hang out and to pack certain clothes and spread them with a photo shoot. And then they bought us all matching pajamas and showed up as our weekend you know what I mean? So like it went both ways. And I think that's why it worked out so well, as we both were on the exact same page and made that connection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think again, like, I think it's just, it's like any relationship, right? Like it's any friendship. It's
effort.
like correct. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's just personalities, how they line up and all of the things, just being open to all of it. Yeah. So,
Exactly.
So you carried both for them back, basically back to back, and you pumped for them, because we could do a whole nother pumping podcast with you. So we'll do that on pumping tips and for longevity of pumping. But yeah, so if anybody has pumping tips that they need, Tasha is definitely the one to reach out to. She is the pumping queen. So yeah.
Love it.
So yeah, definitely. So then you took the longest break ever in between. This has been your longest break.
This has been the
in between the
break. But good though. I mean, it was a break because there was hurdles. I mean, as we all like, I ended up getting an IUD after that one, which once you take that out, you do have to wait I think at least 3 months, 3 cycles.
Yeah, 3 periods.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this. So did you think you were going to retire, or did you just know that you were going to take a longer break? Like, I mean, I know the answer to this, but let's talk to the world about it a little bit, because I always know you want to be pregnant before you're pregnant. Yeah. But, so like, let's talk about the break a little bit in that and kind of your thought process, because this is your last surrogacy, because you were going to, you're hitting the maximum of number of births now. So you'll have to retire after this.
Well, and I thought I had to retire. So once upon a time, it was, 5 vaginal births. So I actually thought after I delivered the sisters, I would be done. And then I got a little bit of a surprise that I don't have to be done, right? And then, so the IUD got in. So I was still pumping June. Like she was born in October and I was still pumping in June. So I think, you still have some stuff that I had to do. I had my IUD that I had to get out and wait for a while. And then we had a match that we didn't quite settle into that I was
talk about that.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that.
Yeah. So I had that. So we had a match that we got together and they were still creating embryos. So it was kind of like, okay, well, we got a few months to wait anyways to create embryos. And we waited, and then nothing ended up coming out of it.
So this was intuition. So this is where this intuition came into play for both you and I, right?
Yeah.
So there were some unexpected delays, and there was just some, from my side, some paperwork delays. And then you and I were kind of like, let's just roll with it. Well, then I started kind of getting a little uneasy, and then you were just trusting me and saying like, okay,
yeah,
sure. And you and I had a conversation, a flip flop, and I said, you know what? I'm not so sure about this. Like, I don't know that I want you to move forward with this match, which does not happen often, I will tell you. And I was pretty honest with you and said, I don't know that I think this is going to be a match for you.
Right.
And so we stopped, right? Yeah. And I said, I don't think we should move forward with here. And so we quite literally said, just kidding. Exactly. We're not going to do this anymore.
Like, if Monica's got a vibe that we're not feeling, like, I trust you, and we move on. But that next match happened like this. It was like days to weeks later, we were rematched and away we go. So, and then, right. You have medical screening, legal, getting a calendar, that was still, I think it was like February to July transfer. So you don't have a big gap in there. So it was definitely the longest gap in between pregnancies, but also I think I healed the most. I know I lost
Yep.
every ounce of baby weight and then so much. It's getting harder through baby, maybe number
Oh,
5 was 9.5 pounds, so
yeah,
got trickier.
and I'm like, not to like, put the sword in there, but I mean, you're getting older.
Yeah.
Like these things take time,
It did, and it
like
took
you're not.
longer, so it really was just up until the last, 2 months before transfers when I lost literally the last pound that I to get back to, my pre-transfer weight, so, honestly, I felt the best going into this transfer. I had so much energy, I was eating so good, it was a good timing, so, honestly, I know there's a turn and burn, I'm like, but for me, this worked out so much better for me to take a little bit more time, and, of course, it's maybe 5 to 6, so a little time in between there is a little bit, that's fine, that's great, so I felt great going into it.
And this really goes back to like the timeline is not always what we want it to be, but it needs to be, because this is when we need to trust the intuition, because it's exactly the match that you
It
needed,
was.
right? Like,
They're so wonderful. And I think I'm going to have a match kind of in between 2 and 3 to 4. And I think it's going to be so great. It's not going to be a transactional, see you at the hospital, never see you again, but it's going to be somewhere in between there.
that sweet spot.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you. Like, I think it's going to be that perfect mix between all of it. And it's just going to be like that nice rounding out of like your experience, but it's going to be that sweet spot. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I think it's going to be I think it's going to be the perfect ending. And honestly, like that last one fell apart and I think it was meant to be because I couldn't have asked for like a final family to get matched with. Truly, they've been awesome. I mean, we talk appropriate amounts right now. It's not overkill, but we have positive pregnancy, we have heartbeat. There's a little time difference, but we're making it work and they show me nothing but love. They send me the cutest, most sweet messages on our important days. And what else can you ask for?
I mean, honestly, yeah. And so I think, yeah, again, it just goes back to like, I know it's so hard when there's delays and like, it's so hard to see like the big picture. I mean, I know you get it, but like, it's so hard, like, especially when you're a first time surrogate, like, oh my gosh, this is taking forever. And like, but like, it's sometimes like, it just has to get there. And then you're like, oh, okay,
Then
now I
it's here.
understand
I
why.
think
Like,
as a newbie, it would have been discouraging what happened in between those last ones. But I've also had a failed transfer and we ended a match. So like, I think that stuff would have probably hit me a little bit harder as a newbie of like, why is this taking so long? Like, what's going on? But as not only as a 5-time surrogate, but I also work at the fertility clinic where I'm like, okay, well, I know what's going on in the background. Like, there's things happening. I'm like,
yeah. No, that's so true. Because, and then I think also because you and I have had a relationship for so many years. So you're like, oh, okay, sure. Like whatever you say,
Monica
and I
knows.
think there's like a level of like, okay, cool. Yeah, whatever. But like, that's very true because it's very hard to see like the big picture that there are delays. It's so hard to know that you're going to get there. Like, and trust the process, that there can be delayed medical screenings, like we miss periods, or there can be failed transfers, and you're not the only one that has failed transfers. Like
Right.
you even as an experienced surrogates, like, back at the other clinics, like, you were like, what the heck, like this place is a joke, but like it's sometimes we have different protocols and you didn't like it there, so all these things like, come into play where it doesn't feel quite as in sync as other places have, for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a big factor.
Yeah. And I mean, there's always stuff working in the background that we don't see and, a timeline on stuff, but we always get there.
Yeah. That's why I know I always tell girls, like, for the one step that you see, I swear I have 20 and I promise you I'm doing it. Like, I promise you my wheels are working behind the scenes.
Absolutely. I think that's what's so helpful about my fertility clinic experience is I'm on the other side working with surrogates in a different aspect that I'm like, oh, you don't know how much work we just put in to get you here. I know you had to wait, but like we're here. So I always try to be as patient as I can, knowing both sides. Yeah. But we're so excited that sometimes it's still hard to be patient because we just want to get the next steps and it's so out of our control. You just have to breathe, let it happen.
I know. And I preach it too. Like, I'm the worst waiter. I'm the worst like overthinker. And I'm always like, oh, don't worry about it, girl. I know, I understand it because I'm that human, like in the real world, like I'm that way too. So I get it. And like, also like, all gonna out Tasha. Like, she's an experienced 5-time surrogate, but this girl asks me questions on the daily, like she's a newbie. Don't let her act like she doesn't forget.
I know on one of your other podcasts, you're like, sometimes the more experienced ask more questions than newbies, and I'm like, totally do.
What
Not
would you?
only is it like, I'm like, are you sure this is what I should be doing? But it's also like, I cannot remember if I did this or should I be doing this?
100%. Like, pretty much today, she already
Yeah.
asked me a question, so don't let her
I'm
fool
like,
you,
I
people.
forget
Yeah,
everything. It was that gap in there. It threw me off.
100%. I swear, experience are. They're always like, well, I don't remember from last
We
time. I'm
don't,
like,
but we
come
don't. We
on.
really don't remember anything that happened. In that, we remember we had a transfer, we had a baby, and it was so wonderful. But like, how did I get there though?
I know. It's true though. But yeah, so just it goes back. So even if you're proven, you still ask all the same questions. No silly questions apply. All those same things are still, because Tasha literally asked a question today, people. So
All the time. I don't know why.
all the time.
It happens.
It really does. What would you tell like your, we kind of already talked about it a little bit, but so like, what would you tell yourself today? Like, if you could tell your experience 5 times surrogate, what would you go back and tell yourself like the first time surrogate, like signing up to be a surrogate the very first time? Like, what would you go tell yourself, little baby Tasha?
Yeah.
What would you tell herself, knowing now what you know, now what you know? What would you tell yourself
I
then?
would tell myself so
Looking
many
back.
things. But definitely one of the
What?
biggest thing
Good.
is expect international. That's not uncommon. We do not live in TikTok or Instagram, which I don't know that I would have known that then, but it's just not the world that we live in. And be patient with everything that happens during the matches because it can take a lot of time. It can be time consuming and it can be a waiting game. It's always a waiting game. It's a hurry up and wait all the time. So just relax and be
Yeah.
patient and keep working out.
Yeah.
Don't quit working
Yeah.
out.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. Because you're a very avid runner. So obviously, like you can't take up running once you become pregnant.
Right.
But like if whatever exercise or whatever routine you have, maintain that, right? So you run quite literally all the way up until you deliver because you're a very avid runner. So stay active. So you really, that's truly something you believe very passionate about because that keeps you feeling very active and fluid. And obviously I think that's helped you significantly in your labor. So touch on that a little bit and just like how active you stay and all of that.
Yeah, so I was super active before I even got pregnant with my son. We pretty much lived in the gym, and then I took up more in the running, so I've been able to keep up with that. It does get harder with each baby, and it's hot in Arizona, so right now it's just not the time. Right now, right now it's walking season, but whatever I was doing before, I just keep up with, and it does help me stay active and keep healthy the whole pregnancy. And it has truly helped me feel so great, but also deliveries and recovery have been super great. And is that my fitness and my running, or is that, am I lucky because I'm healthy? But I would say always be as active as you can, as long as you were before. I mean, don't pick up a new running routine in the middle of pregnancy, but stay active even when you're getting ready to go into the cycles. You know what I mean? Go out for your nightly walks, your morning walks, and keep active and keep it through. You'll just feel better overall. You're going to feel better through pregnancy and you're going to feel better going into that delivery.
Yeah, because I mean, even just for like your mental health, right? Because this is an emotional thing, right? It's emotionally, you put pressure on yourself, even though we tell you not to, all these things, right?
Yeah.
You're on extra hormones, like all the things. And so anything that you can do to kind of maintain a routine or just make yourself feel better, across the board, the healthier, happier you are, everything else falls into place typically behind you, right?
Exactly. In a nighttime walk, I think 30 minutes of walking, just that release that you get. I would say everybody stay active, get out there, take a walk, take a breath, take some new time, listen to a podcast.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Listen to our podcast. So, well, thank you so much, Tasha. I really, really appreciate it. So, I think your best advice is just to keep open mind, right?
And just mind.
Like that. And so when you meet like girls that are just, thinking about surrogacy or like what, because you've had so many different types of matches and, so would you say there's an ideal match or, what would you break it down? Like,
I think there's an ideal match. Like, I don't think anything on paper is an ideal match, but I think we all need different things and especially at different points in our life. And I think what you make of it is a huge part of it. What you put into it is what you can get out of it as well. So I don't think that there is a perfect match. I don't, my San Diego family wasn't perfect because we were meant to be, or did we create that connection on our own because we were both open and ready for it? I think it's more about you and personally than just
Yeah.
an
Oh,
ideal.
that's perfectly said.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's perfect. Yeah. So I think that would be the best advice, right? So it just goes back to being open-minded and getting exactly what you need out of it, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't think that there's a match that you can write down on paper that's going to come out 100%, but I think you can still make it pretty great.
And then, so I think too, do you think it's so important to like the backside of it, right? Like the sisterhood and like what the connections that you get from the other surrogates too, right? So like if you thought that you wanted a closer connection with your intended parents and it doesn't necessarily play out that way or what you envisioned it to be, what does that look like when you end up having a closer relationship with your surrogate sisters or the connection of the community that you get with the surrogates? Like, does that maybe fill like your cup the other way and unexpected?
I think so. So I think if you go into a surrogacy, let's say my second one where it was kind of a separated one, of course that was fine for me, but if I was feeling some sort of way, that's what you have your sisters for in your group. I mean, we get together and take pictures, we have our dinners in our group that we get to talk about. So I think that could be another way to completely fulfill yourself of like, I just want to tell somebody my story of my delivery. Like, as anybody, they're going to listen. That's what we're here for. We're all interested. We went through the same thing and we are super interested in your story and what you just went through on them. So I do think that is a full way of filling your cup afterwards. If you weren't completely satisfied with maybe how the connection turned out at the end, that's what we're all.
Right, exactly. Because that never ends, right? Like, so I mean,
Yeah.
that doesn't go away. Like some of those friendships, if not lapse a lifetime, if not, some of the best friends you have, because quite literally, like, we've talked on this before too, but like no one understands like a surrogate, or no one's experienced that like another surrogate.
Well, you don't just run
And
into
so,
them, right? You go to the grocery store, you probably aren't going to, you're not going to end up in a room with 16 other surrogates except for our room. I mean, in the daily basis, I know surrogates all the time because I'm in this and I'm in fertility, but it's not a normal thing to run across. So to have that group of people that you can talk to, I mean, my family is so supportive, but like, can I really get into, this is how I felt with this? And they're going to be like, okay. My sister, I told her, I said, my beta is positive. She was like, well, what's a beta? And I'm like, what does that number mean? Yeah. I'm like, it was this number. And she was like, that's good. And I'm like, yeah, see, that's something I could talk to you guys, being like, this is great. So it's just a connection. You're going to have it forever. I mean, there's people that have retired out and we're still friends.
Yeah, 100%. So I think that would be, really good advice too, is to really lean on each other in that too, because that's a bond that won't ever end, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And nobody's going to understand what you went through, like somebody that went through it as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's a level of respect there and understanding that just doesn't exist quite literally outside that room.
It
for
really
sure.
doesn't.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen surrogates in the group talk about like, oh, I had like the postpartum kind of like tears and stuff. And to us, we understand that. We know what you're feeling. We know what the hormones feel like. And it's not a sad thing. It's just that. But you tell that to somebody else and be like, it's because you're sad that you did it. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, they're not going to understand the way that a surrogate would understand your feelings after.
They're going to be like, oh, well, maybe you have postpartum depression, or, oh, well, maybe you shouldn't have done that, or, oh, I told you that wasn't going to work out. They give you not necessarily the right support.
Exactly.
Or not meaning to.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
They just don't know how to.
They might not even realize that they're doing it, but us on the other side, we kind of maybe know how to interact a little bit more because we know what they're feeling.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. Because they just don't know they just don't know the context of it. Yeah, exactly.
It's a different world over here.
I mean, it really is. Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much, Tasha. I really, really appreciate it. You're a wealth of knowledge, and I think you're in a class of your own, being so experienced. And I'm so honored to have been a part of to be a part of all your surrogacies, and it's very special to me.
It's been wonderful.
I love it.
I would do it forever if I could.
Yeah. I know. It makes me want to cry, but it'll never be the end. No. You'll never be done with me.
It'll be great. Yeah, no, we're never getting away from each other.
Because she's always like, oh, you ready to let's put a baby in me? And I'm like, oh, this is the last time.
I know. But it's good. It's a good chapter to close, and I can be helpful in other scenarios now.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So like, yeah, just like Tasha was saying, like the group never ends. Like she can always be a mentor. Like, she has a wealth of knowledge to provide. And so, the baby making chapter will end, but that doesn't mean the knowledge doesn't end and the support doesn't end and the sisterhood doesn't end and all of that. So there's always much more to give beyond that.
Of course.
Because you have done your part above and beyond and helping families to say the least. So yeah, very special.
It's been wonderful.
All right. Well, I love you to death, and thank you so much. And we will do a whole nother episode on pumping because I think that you have a lot of experience to share on that too.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Tasha. I appreciate it so
You're
much.
welcome. Bye.